every day, all along the way. There's a rainbow of perfect love on the land and sea. Shine for you and me. There's a rainbow of perfect love. There's a rainbow shining bow of love.
All right, we don't have a whole lot of time. For some reason, a long-winded preacher. So we will get right into class. How about that? I have a 4-point outline. The title of our outline today is The Rebellion of Absalom is Planned. And there's going to be a word found in the biblical text, and the word is conspiracy. Okay, folks? That is not a good word. Okay? That is not a good word. But that's what's going on in this particular chapter. I've given 4 points to the chapter. Here they are. Number 1, Absalom steals the conscience of the people. Number 2, Absalom steals the country from David. Number 3, Absalom steals David's counselor. And number 4, Absalom steals David's courage to fight. So Absalom is a thief, isn't he? And he steals a lot of things from David. Who is David? Okay, he's father of Absalom, and he is the king of Israel, isn't he? And so very, very interesting. Let's just go through the questions as quickly as we can, and if we get to them all, we'll do our best to do that. What did Absalom prepare for himself? Ah, yes. The Bible says that it came to pass after this that Absalom prepared him chariots and horses and 50 men. Wow, to run before him. Kyle and DeLitch make this statement. I thought this was interesting. This was a display of princely pomp. Okay, a display of princely pomp. Folks, if I pulled up here in a chariot, and had a chariot of several horses, and had 50 men around that, guess what that would do? It would draw some attention, wouldn't it? You know, first thing you'd ask me is, why are you riding in a chariot? But after that, it would draw some attention, wouldn't it? And that's what Absalom's wanting to do. He pulls up to the gate of the city in his chariot, got his horses, and 50 men who are there. He is wanting to create some attraction, isn't he? And he does a pretty good job of doing it. Let me ask you this. Is Absalom royalty? Yeah, he's the prince, isn't he? He is the son of the king. And so if you get a prince pulling up at the gate of the city, do you think that's going to draw a little attention? Oh, yes. And so he's immediately drawn to himself some attention. Where did Absalom stand when he rose up early in the morning? Yes, and Absalom rose up early and stood by the way of the gate. Question, is the gate important? I got some yeses. Let me ask this question. Why is the gate important? Okay, number 1, it is where the men, namely the rulers of the city, gather. Okay, so it's a very important gathering place for the rulers of the city. Why would the rulers of the city be gathered there? No reason? Why would they gather there? Okay, it's the entrance, but why would the leaders gather at the entrance of the city? What's that? Yes, folks, the leaders, these elderly men of the city, they would gather there in order to hear the different disputes, to have judgments, to converse with the people of the city. Why the gate? Well, that's the place where everybody entered into the city and where everybody left the city, right? And so they would be at the gate, and whoever came by, they could speak to them, they could discuss issues, they could make judgments, whatever needed to be done. So it was a very important part of the city. We don't do that way anymore, do we? Every city now has downtown, where you go do a lot of your business and things, okay? Not back then. Downtown was the gate of the city, and where many transactions took place. Who would Absalom confront when they came into the city? Here's verse 2. And it was so that when any had a controversy, came to the king for judgment, that Absalom would speak to them. Okay? Anyone who came in wanting to speak to the king, who had some kind of a controversy, folks, anybody, Absalom would immediately confront that individual, okay? What question would Absalom ask the ones who came? Yes, of what city art thou? Then Absalom called unto him and said, Of what city art thou? And he said, Thy servant is one of the tribes of Israel. Whose hearts is he trying to win, guys? He's trying to win the hearts of the tribes of Israel. Okay? Would strangers enter into the city? Yeah, strangers would enter into the city, okay? People from other countries, people from other places. And who was he primarily interested in, it seems? Yes, he is primarily interested in the children of Israel. What was he trying to do? Yeah, folks, he's trying to steal the kingdom, is he not? Well, the best way to steal the kingdom is to win the hearts of the citizens, isn't it? And so that's what he's trying to do. And can you imagine somebody comes in and says, Well, I'm of the tribe of Benjamin. He says, Oh, wonderful, come here. I need to talk to you. Okay, so off he goes and would speak to them. And Absalom said unto him, See, thy matters are blank and blank. Good and right. Wow. What's he doing? That's exactly right. He's being a great politician, isn't he? You know, if you're trying to win the hearts of somebody, and somebody comes in and he says, tells you, where are you from? Well, I'm from the tribe of Levi. And, oh, wonderful. Come here. What's your problem? He says, well, my dog has a broken toenail. What would you say? Well, that's the stupidest thing you've ever heard in my life. What are you doing here wanting to talk to the king about a broken toenail of your dog? Guess what Absalom would say? Ooh, your matters are just and right. Guess what it makes you feel like? He's on whose side? He's on my side. He doesn't think that I'm here out of a crazy reason. He's not trying to dismiss me. In fact, he thinks I'm here for good and right reasons, doesn't he? Folks, he was trying to side with these individuals. He would boast for them. His boast for them would cause them to feel good about themselves, wouldn't it? You know? Why are you here? Oh, that's a wonderful reason to be here. Okay? And so he was trying to win the hearts of these people. What did Absalom say the king had failed to do? Yes, but there is no man deputed of the king to hear thee. Now, the question that we ask is what? Why did David allow that? That may be one question. Or we might ask, is it the truth? Right? Was there somebody David may have placed there, and yet Absalom's doing everything he could possibly do to what? Catch everybody who comes in first, right? Okay, so it's, there's a lot of different possibilities. Was he derelict in his duties? Were the matters that Absalom had declared to be good and right just minor problems, and you wouldn't want somebody to hear those kind of cases? Or was Absalom catching these individuals before they could get to the person that was deputed by the king? We don't know, do we? We only know that Absalom is catching everybody that he can possibly catch when they come through that gate. What desire would Absalom then express to the individual? Nobody. Absalom said, moreover, Oh, that I were made judge in the land, that every man which hath any suit or cause might come unto me. Now just think. Here comes an individual, he's got a controversy. He walks through the gate. First person who catches him is who? Absalom. Now folks, that's not a minor person in the kingdom. Remember, he's a prince. So here's this very prominent individual who grabs you, right? And what's the question that he asks? Number one, where are you from? Well, I'm from the tribe of Manasseh. Oh, fantastic. Why are you here? And folks, it didn't matter what they said. Didn't matter what they said. Didn't matter what cause it was. He would say, oh, your cause is what? good and right. Who are you to hear? Who do you want to hear this? I want the king to hear this. And he says, king hasn't put anybody here to hear this kind of stuff. But if I were judge of the land, things would be a lot different. Right? Isn't that the way you cast doubt on leadership? And isn't that the way you undermine leadership? You talk about what they don't do and what you would do if you could. See, you're so much better than he is. And that's what he's telling them. You know, if I were the judge of the land, it wouldn't be this way. If I were judge of the land, there'd be somebody to hear you. There's nobody here to hear you. But make me the what? Make me the judge. And guess what? Everything will be wonderful. Boy, that's the promise of every politician, isn't it? If you put me in office, everything will be wonderful. And ain't much, never changes for anybody. Just about the truth right there. What would Absalom do so differently? Ah, yes, and I would do him justice. Have you ever gone someplace and you wanted to go get an answer? And you give up a day of work and you go there and you sit there for hours and you finally meet somebody and you talk and you leave and nothing's any better. You ever done that? You know, this craziest thing, you know. Go spend a couple hours at the DMV and you know, you still don't get whatever sticker you need, you know. Or whatever it is, you just don't get, you go to the doctor, you sit there for 4 hours, and when they get through, they don't give you a lick of medicine. They just say, go home and it'll wear off, you know. That happens a lot, doesn't it? Well, the thing that Absalom's promising is, guess what? You come to me, and guess what? You'll always get done correctly. Your matters will always be addressed. There will always be justice. You will not leave without an answer. Not if I'm who? Not if I'm king. Wow. I'll solve climate change. I'll solve coronavirus. I'll solve everything that's out there. Right? Folks, this kind of stuff politicians have done all the way back to who? Absalom. Now watch this next one. How did Absalom respond to all that did obeisance before him? Oh man, he would do what? He would put forth his hand and what? They would put their hand in his and he would what? Kiss them. Now just think about that. They walk up to you, they're going to do obeisance, and he does what? He puts out his hand and he... Who is he? He's the prince. He's the king's son, and he's kissing me. Does that make me feel pretty good about myself? Oh, yes. You see, you can almost hear him. Don't get on your knees, right? You don't have to bow before me. Here, give me a hand. Oh, man. What'd you say a while ago, Cheryl? Like kissing babies? Yes, sometimes people like to just be kissed, don't they? Guarantee it. Unbelievable. And it was so that when any man came nigh to him to do obeisance, he put forth his hand and took him and kissed him. Almost make you sick, doesn't it? Just almost make you nauseous. True or false? Absalom only catered to the rich and powerful of Israel. False. Listen to this, folks. And on this manner did Absalom to all Israel that came to the king for judgment. Folks, it didn't matter whether you were pretty or ugly. It didn't matter whether you were rich or poor. It didn't matter whether you had a position in Israel or whether you were a peasant in Israel. He did this to who? Everybody. Whose hearts do you eventually win by doing these kind of things? You usually win from about the middle class down, don't you? You know? Because those are the ones who are what? Impressed. You know? The rich and powerful, you know, don't be slobbering on me. Don't be kissing my hand. But you know, the little guys, they like what? They love the attention, especially from who? Especially from somebody so rich and powerful, and to know that they're going to take care of me, to know that they're going to address my issues. Oh, can you imagine? They go home, oh, if only Absalom were in power. How long had David been reigning? We don't know exactly, do we? He'd been 7.5 years in Hebron. The kingdom had been healed, and now they were together as both, Benjamin and Judah were now all together under one kingdom, right? And so we don't know exactly how long, but it's been quite a few years. Let me ask you something. Do people get tired of the same leadership? Yeah. Get tired of the same leadership, don't they? And you finally get a little disgruntled, and then the new guy comes, and he just does what's said in question 12. Because of his action, what was Absalom successful in doing? Yes, so Absalom stole the hearts of the men of Israel. Was that what he wanted to do? Yeah. Folks, I want you to think about that. He took care of their needs, right? But for what? But for an ulterior motive, didn't he? You see, we have to be very careful about that, don't we? There's a lot of individuals who will try to take care of us and make it seem like they're taking care of us, but the only reason they're doing it is for what? For themselves. He wanted to steal their hearts. He knew exactly what he was doing. I wrote down 7 things that Absalom had done. Number 1, he was at the gate early, showing diligence. Okay? May have been the first one there, right? There he was, set up with his display early in the morning. Number 2, he did not have to be approached. He did what? He approached others. Didn't have to approach him. He assured them that their matters were good and right. He noted the flaws of the present administration. David just doesn't have anybody here. He made promises about what he would do if he were in office. Oh, that I were judge. He showed respect to those who came to him, almost making them his equal, doesn't he? And lastly, he did not show any respect of persons. Folks, you want to steal the hearts of somebody? Follow the footsteps of Absalom. The problem was Absalom was a wicked man, wasn't he? He was not a good man, a very wicked man. How many years passed before Absalom asked David's permission to leave Jerusalem? Okay. And it came to pass after 40 years that Absalom said unto the king. It's not a good translation, folks. How long did David reign in Israel? 40 years. This was not at the end of David's reign. Okay. This is somewhere in the middle of David's reign. Okay. It is a transcribal error in the Greek text. Okay, should be 4 years. Okay, 4 years. Now the question is, 4 years after what? 4 years after he came back to Jerusalem, or 4 years after he was restored to the presence of the king? See, he came back to Jerusalem, and how long was it before he got to actually see David? Okay, it's 2 more years, wasn't it? So most individuals believe it was 4 years after the time he entered into David's presence, because that was the last event that was mentioned in the text. Okay, 4 years later, he has now done what? He's done worked his magic on Israel, hasn't he? Okay. Now remember, was he responsible for getting himself back into Jerusalem? Him and Joab had plotted together, right? And then, was he responsible for getting himself back into the presence of the king? Yes. Remember what he did to Joab's field? He burned his field and got himself back in the presence of the king. So he's slowly working his magic. He knows what he wants to do all this time. And he takes these progressive steps to get where he wants to be. Janie, you had a... King James Version is the 40 years. Yeah. It's 4 years. It should be. 4. Not 40, because 40 he would have been way beyond his ruler. He was only 40 years total as a ruler in Israel. Yeah, English Standard Version says 4 years. And that's the correct translation here, okay? 4 years instead of 40. So after 4 years he comes to David. Where did he want to go and what did he want to do, did he say? He wanted to go to Hebron. And what did he want to do? Pay his vows. Now I want you to listen to what he says. I pray thee, let me go and pay my vow, which I vowed unto the Lord in Hebron. For thy servant vowed a vow while I abode in Geshur in Syria, saying, if the Lord shall bring me forth again indeed to Jerusalem, then I will serve Him. Man. Now, we don't make vows in our society like they used to make vows in that society. About the only vow we make today is what? Marriage vow, right? That's about the only vow you hear about, anything about. And we don't honor that one too good, do we? So, but anyway, vows were very important, weren't they? Now remember, he said, I told the Lord, if you get me back to Jerusalem, that I will what? I'll fulfill my vow and serve you. Okay? Do you think that made an impression on David? Yeah, folks, David's not going to not allow his son to fulfill a vow. Okay? Well, if you've made a vow and look, you did get back to Jerusalem, you are here, so guess what? He's going to have his good pleasure, is he not? Yeah, just go on to Hebron and do whatever you got to do. That'll be fine. And he even went to the king and got his what? He got his permission. He didn't just go to Hebron. He got his permission to be there. Two things about Hebron. Are you ready? It was at one time David's official capital. Okay, he reigned in Hebron the first 7.5 years, didn't he? Folks, it was the birthplace of guess who? Absalom. It's his birthplace as well. Okay, he had 4 sons, did he not, in Hebron, and Absalom was one of those sons. Okay, really, what did Absalom need? Absalom needed an excuse to get where? To get out of Jerusalem in order to organize his forces for what? For an overthrow. That's what he's about to do. Remember, he's already stolen the hearts, right? All he's got to do now is put his plan in operation to overthrow the kingdom. And he's not going to do it in Jerusalem. He's going to do it in the city of Hebron. True or false? David refused to grant Absalom permission to go to Hebron. False. False. I ask this question. Was David ignorant of Absalom's activities conducted at the gates of Jerusalem? I don't know. You know, I know you can be fooled and I know you can be overthrown, but you know, when you got all this pomp and ceremony every day at the gates of the city, you know, how did David not know? Now I realize people can do things and you never know, right? And it appears David didn't know, but boy, it's just hard to believe that he didn't know. Who did Absalom send throughout all Israel? Spies, but Absalom sent spies throughout all Israel. That little word spy, I thought this was interesting. Anybody ever looked up the definition of the word spy? The literal definition is this: to go around on foot. That's pretty good, isn't it? That's what a spy does. He gets somewhere and he goes around on foot, getting himself in all the doors he can get his feet into, doesn't he? And pretty interesting. These footmen were for Absalom. They were sent from place to place throughout the nation in order to sound the trumpet when it was time for the overthrow of the nation. When they heard the sound of the trumpet, what were they to say to the Israelites? Absalom reigneth in Hebron. Isn't it funny that the people just believed that? Right? Who was the king? David was the king. Absalom withdraws himself to Hebron, has it announced all over Israel what? I'm the king. Didn't matter whether it's truth or not. And guess what happens? Everybody believes it, don't they? Sometimes all you got to do is what? Just say it and people believe it. Isn't that true? It's unbelievable. And so that was going to be the announcement that he made. How many individuals did Absalom take with him from Jerusalem? 200. Now listen to this. And they went in their blank and blank blank anything. They went in their simplicity and knew not anything. 200 men went with Absalom to Hebron and did not know what he was going to do. I'm telling you. Okay, didn't know what he was up to. Didn't know what his plans are. Folks, here's a lesson. You only need a few people in the right places to overthrow a nation. Okay? There was Absalom, the king's son. Who was the other man we know of that was actively involved in this plotting? Ahithophel, the counselor of David. That's the only two men that we know of that are named actively involved in this plot. The only other thing that he did was what? Fool the people. Okay? He got the what? He got the people on his side. So that's the only other thing that he needed to do. And then get yourself established and you can overthrow the nation. That little word simplicity means in their innocence. They knew nothing about this. For whom did Absalom send from the city of Gilead? Yes. And Absalom sent for Ahithophel. Ahithophel, folks. Ahithophel is David's who? He's a counselor. Okay? He's supposed to be a trusted advisor of the king himself. He had been long working with Absalom to overthrow the kingdom, folks. Sad, isn't it? I find it interesting that guess who's not in Jerusalem right now? Ahithophel's not in Jerusalem either. Is he? He's where? He's in Gilead. He's not in Jerusalem. So can you see these two men? All right, look, I'm going to get to Hebron. You go on to Gilead, and when it's time, guess what? I'll call for you, and we'll get together. See, now Ahithophel doesn't have to explain to David why he needs to be where? In Hebron. Okay? Guys, this is a plotted overthrow of this particular nation. Okay? There was a, let's see. I was trying to find it. Right there, very next question, I'm sorry. Notice I mentioned that word, and the conspiracy was strong, and the people increased continually for Absalom. Did anybody look up the word conspiracy? An unlawful alliance. Conspiracy, treason, unlawful alliance. Folks, it was not something that should have transpired. But yet it did, didn't it? Unbelievable. So Absalom's about to do what? Take the kingdom. It's about his. We'll talk about it more next week. Thank you, thank you.
Again, I guess if you say something enough times, people believe it.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Good to see you.